ISP is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. Yeah, all my cards, they fit snugly into a perfect fit, and then we slide them right into an Elite 2 sleeve. Those cards, hey, well, they're resting easy and protected in my Deck Vault 100. Ooh, it's a nice one. Well, all of my spiciest gems, well, they're on display in my Z Folio LX. Yeah, you could treat your collection with love by going to bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Oh, yeah. And hey, maybe cards might not be your only thing. Are you into coins, comics? Maybe you want to show off your record collection? They've got you covered. Use the code ISP10 at checkout for 10% off your BCW Supplies purchases. BCW Supplies. Protect, store, display.
This is Andy Trong. I'm a Patreon supporter, and you're listening to ISP on 983 Media.
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true.
This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 79. We've got a trio of champions out there, each representing a meta dangerous hero. I've got, well, let's see. Faris, the Empress herself, is going to be representing Dromai. We've got Dagan White representing Oldhim, and we've got Levi Rauch ringing the bell for Azalea. And as always, this episode is brought to you by FAB Cards. Let's get to the news, friends. Well, there has been, like we mentioned, a nice little shakeup in the meta due to outsiders, and things are kind of settling down in terms of what we're going to see at the Pro Tour. And one of the best litmus tests that we're going to get is the Battle Hardened in Richmond, which has just wrapped up this past weekend. And who do we have on top? That would be an Oldhim won by Pat Eshke. Let's take a look also at what the distribution is of heroes. If you can see at the top, lots of Dromai, lots of Lexi, Azaleas, Oldhims. That's what we're going to get. All right, how about a nice article that was released as part of the Collectors Week, wrapping it up? It has to do with the distribution and what is out there in terms of the sets that we already have. The numbers, how many boxes of each set are out there in the wild? How many are there going to be? The numbers might surprise you. And if you want a very deep discussion about this, I do recommend you guys go check out Flesh and Pod with Logan and Charmer. They just had an episode where they dig into the numbers as well as their impressions. So best that you go check them out as well. And I do want to clue you in a little bit to a contest that we've got going on regarding the Pro Tour Q&A. Now, I'm going to be hosting the Q&A as I normally do. I get to ride shotgun alongside some really awesome people in the industry, and most notably would be James White. And if there's going to be a question to be asked, if you can't make it, let me ask that question for you. Go check out my Twitter at WatchFlake. There is a tweet that I had put out regarding that Q&A. You got to retweet it and drop your question in there. If I choose your question, which will be asked and answered at the Pro Tour, it'll be recorded and it will be replayed as part of the broadcast. So if you have that and you have a question that you have burning inside that you want James White to answer, you can drop it in the comments, in the replies of that particular tweet. So go check it out. Again, twitter.com/watchflake. That's where I'm going to be. That's where the contest is. All right. We have a wonderful trio of champions, of pros, who are going to be digging into what the meta looks like, as well as where their particular hero of choice is positioned in this meta. All this on ISP 79. This episode of Instant Speed Podcast is brought to you by FAB Cards. Located in Utah, FAB Cards is a smart choice for all of your flesh and blood needs. Prepare for the battles you'll face through the world of Wraith by gearing up at kfabcards.com. That's KAYFABECARDS.com, and get all of the cards shipped directly to your door. Hey, if Magic or Pokemon is your jam, they've got you covered. FAB Cards has a plethora of TCG options, sealed products, and singles to keep you collecting and keep you competitive. FAB Cards, be who you want to be. The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes a trio of wonderful guests. Hold on now, because I wrote this down. I did actually write this down. Like, it's incredible as you kind of progress in your podcasting career, how like your first 20 to 30 episodes are so clean cut and all you want to do is improve. And here we are at number 79. And I'm just like, I can wing it, but I can't because I write things down. So bear with me here. A trio of major players in the flesh and blood realm representing Dromai. We have the talented Empress herself, the artist of Blackwing Studios, Mara Faris. We also welcome one of the most underappreciated and dangerous competitors that is a consistent top 8 threat representing Oldhim is Dagan White. Nice to see you. And finally, the vindicated ranger himself, who has been stringing his bow for ages. That is the messiah of the Azalea Cult, Levi Rauch. Welcome, everybody. How is everyone doing?
I'm doing great. My cat has decided she wants to join our podcast.
Our podcast. Oh, okay. I wasn't aware that I just gave that one up. I'm sorry. I hold all the rights to this non-money making venture. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. Oh, where was
I was told we get royalties.
Well, I was not told that. So you can. How's this? You can have half of all the royalties I make. Is that fair?
Oh.
All right. Perfect.
Sweet.
Levi, doing all right?
Yeah, just got up, got my morning coffee, and I'm ready to go.
Morning coffee at 7:30 p.m.
Yep.
Interesting. How about you, Dagan?
Yeah, pretty good. Definitely not having morning coffee, but we're doing good.
All right, cool. It looks like you're like you're chiming in from a space station, like in the Delta Quadrant. Like,
Yeah, I'm clearly the villain going into this tournament, so we're gonna act the part, you know.
I think that's a very good statement to sort of lead us into what we're talking about, which is essentially the fact that Outsiders meta has been in flux to a degree. There's been a lot of prognostication about it, but ultimately where we're at now is that we've had like the brawl that was an Azalea mirror to figure it out, but then it seems like things just kind of eventually always devolve into, well, why not just play Oldhim? And that's kind of what I want to talk to you guys about, which is after a solid, like close to a month or so that we've got Outsiders, has Outsiders been enough of a shakeup? Has it had a significant enough impact on the meta? And I'm going to lead this with you, Levi, because you have essentially reaped probably the most benefits from this set.
Yeah, I think it has had a pretty good shakeup. We've seen decks like Icelander kind of get pushed out of the meta. We've seen some of the aggro decks get pushed out a bit. And that's kind of on the back of both the Rangers being risen up by Outsiders quite a bit. However, Oldhim kind of didn't get pushed anywhere. He's like, nope, I'm gonna stay right here. So if you're focusing just on the Oldhim side, that hasn't changed. But all the decks like right around him and slightly below him have all shifted.
And that you, as I wouldn't call it the beneficiary of this stagnation, but Dagan, it must be a comforting fact when you realize that you can kind of just lean back on what you have been riding high on for so long.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have to adapt some to the new cards like Codex A Frailty and everything like that, but he's definitely in a great spot for sure.
So in all this, the evaluation that I had, and I wrote an article for FAB TCG that was printed, I think, about a week ago, but I wrote it about 3 weeks ago. And it was my impressions of what the meta was going to look like. And I had Azalea as being the big bad that everybody has to sort of angle around. But I also had Dromai as being one of the heroes that was well positioned to deal with the most of the garbage that was out there, most of the scariness that was out there. And Mara, you as somebody who is so intimately linked to Dromai, you've talked to me about the fact that a lot of players are quote unquote playing Dromai wrong or playing Dromai suboptimally. What do you mean by that?
You're gonna get me in trouble. It's what you're gonna do. But yeah, I think Dromai is still in a really interesting position. Dromai has been out for several months now, and I still just don't think all of the aspects of that hero have been really fully explored yet. I think we're seeing several Dromai lists that are radically different from one another. You know, from the big dragon lists to the Empress Dromai aggro list to the red line. And even like we've seen a lot of talks of like Iris Dromai coming back just due to the Oldhim menace. I think there's so much still left to discover on that hero. And I think we're going to see some of that at the Pro Tour. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation on this hero that's still left to come.
Okay, I'm letting you off the hook that easily, Mara, because when I was at the Chicago Brawl, I think it was myself, it was DM Armada, it was Charmer, and we were nestled quite neatly into the corner of that whole tournament. But right within arm's reach was you, yelling and screaming and hooting and hollering and stuff like that. But in some of my brief conversation that I had with you, talking about Dromai, you legitimately said like people are just playing it wrong. What do you mean by wrong? That's what I want to know. And do you believe also, as an kind of like an addition to this question, do you believe that players are figuring it out over time because Dromai has been such a punishing hero? It's got the skill floor of it is pretty low. It's pretty high. So the barrier of entry to that hero might be difficult. Like, do you think that there enough time has gone by and enough people are appreciating it that is now cycled forward where Dromai is a threat again?
I mean, I've always thought Dromai is a threat. I mean, obviously, but no, honestly, like I think, like I said, I think there's still a lot of things that people just aren't quite like. Even players that have been really dedicated to the hero, I think there's a lot of things like I don't. I'm truncating myself a little bit because I could talk on this for hours. You've heard me talk on this for hours. But just in fundamental deck building on how Dromai functions, like the entire Ash mechanic, I think is one that a lot of people just still kind of struggle to wrap their brain around. I still die a little inside every time I see a Dromai player go, I pitch a red card to Furnace because I need this Ash past turn. Like, I feel like people are building Dromai without even the consideration of Ash as a constraint and Ash as a resource. To the point where, like, I was literally just talking to somebody about this today, and I feel like it's the equivalent of playing a Bravo deck with 55 blue or 55 reds and just going, well, these are the powerful cards, I'll figure out how to cast them later. And I think you see that in a lot of the Dromai lists right now. You just see this pile of like, well, these are all the good dragons, I don't know how I'm going to get Ash, we'll figure it out as we go. And then you see a lot of things like pitch 2 cards for a blue sweeping blow for 1, or like, just pitching cards blindly to Furnace just to generate Ash because their decks aren't built to respect the Ash constraints.
So one of the things that I can kind of lean on is, and again, like, it's just taking advantage to a degree of players who think that they know what they're doing with Dromai. As a Guardian main, as an Oldhim player, I myself have only lost cleanly to a Dromai, I think, once in the past 4 months. And that was DM Armada, who knew exactly what the plan was, executed it brilliantly. And what's fascinating about that game is it was played privately in person before an event. Him and I just picked up a table and I said, I'm going to play this, you play this, or that's the deck he had. And we played it. Do you have the same feeling, Dagan, on Oldhim? Because I feel like there's these two, entities. There's the Dromai people and the Oldhim people, and both think that they are well favored into that matchup. And I am of that Oldhim thing where I'm like, unless you're in a top 20 Dromai player in the world, I am not afraid of you. In fact, to me, it feels like a gimme because most players have no clue what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think the problem with that matchup is it's played so differently depending on the player. So like you'll have some Oldhims that'll like hammer every Ashwing, like hammer everything that enters the board. And I prefer a much more aggressive route where I just hit their face and then make them block with their dragons instead, so you get multiple. So I think a lot of the issues that come up with determining who's favored in that matchup comes down to play style a lot. And then even with Dromai's builds can differ quite a bit between like the aggro and big dragon builds.
Mm-hmm.
So in
and
your
Dromai both in the aggro and they're both in the play style too, with even in the Dromai side of things. There are so many different schools of thought on how to approach that matchup. You see people that'll go really hard on the ghostly touch angle and just jam every dragon into poppers just to try and get the ghostly touch count up, and then just really lean hard on that. You'll see some that will try to pressure a lot early to kind of get a little bit more damage bled in early to where like you have a little bit easier time in the late game. You have the ones where you're trying to set up these like big dragon chain like the Mirror Guy Chromai pitch stacks. like even on the Dromai side, there's a dozen different ways to approach that matchup, and I think that matchup revolves a lot on both players understanding how they want to play the game, but then also very quickly recognizing how their opponent wants to play that game and being able to adjust their strategy. And I think that's a very hard thing to do on both sides.
I agree.
So now we've got Levi, who's kind of in the middle of this tug of war on Azalea, because it's, these decisions that are being made. I would be, remiss if players who are considering what they're bringing to Pro Tour don't have Azalea as one of the major, like everything is going to orbit around that to a degree. Maybe that changed with Richmond. And again, but the thing about Richmond is that everybody already knows that they need to worry about Oldhim. Everybody already needs to have a game plan or needs to understand that that's going to be out there. Azalea is a brand new baddie. It's like we've entered Marvel Phase 5 or Phase 6, and like we've just seen the big reveal, and it's not Jonathan Majors because apparently he got dropped by his talent agency today. But there's a new Kang in town, Levi, and it seems to be Azalea. Where do you on Azalea? First of all, I guess I can if you can tell us or not. Are you going to be bringing Azalea to Pro Tour?
Almost definitely.
Okay.
There's probably a small chance of a pivot, but I'm going to go with 95% Azalea.
95 is good enough. We round up to 100 here. So when you're bringing this Azalea, and I know that for you, it's kind of just been your thing. How much of your game plan changes when you see all these Oldhims winning, and the next to the sheer amount of representation that there are in Dromais? Are you doubling down on those? Or are you saying, hey, I'm the one at the wheel here, they've got to listen to my music and figure it out themselves?
Yeah, to an extent. So Azalea traditionally has had bad matchups into both Dromai and Oldhim. Obviously, with the power increase in Outsiders, we've seen a better matchup. I think they're both still unfavored, but the deck needs to be tailored towards those two right now, purely because there's such a large representation. We've seen the last couple events, Dromai has been the most popular deck. However, at open entry events, it's usually a little overrepresented. And then we've also seen Oldhim still high in the numbers, where in open entry events, he's usually a bit underrepresented. So I'm still expecting a large portion of the field to be those two decks. So yeah, the deck is tailored to even up those matchups as best you can.
So with these numbers that we see from Richmond, which is 15 Dromais, 14 Lexis, which is great, by the way, because I've been on the Lexi train for quite a little while here, for easily a month or two. A buddy of mine, Nick Bolas, who designed a list that is really spectacular, and I wish that more people would give him a little bit of that respect. But ultimately, we see a lot of Lexis. Are they converting, at the same right clip? Probably not, but they're still out there. But 15 Dromais, 14 Lexis, 11 Oldhims, and then 8 Azaleas with 8 more Bravos, 8 more Rossuris, and 6 Dash. That's pretty much the top end of the chain here. And I'm wondering, with these results from Richmond, how much is this going to affect what those numbers will translate? Do you think it's just going to be a direct translation into PT Baltimore? Or do you think that people are going to probably read this and say, I need more Guardian defense. I need more Oldhim defense. So do you think there's going to be numbers of Dash players that are going to shoot through the roof? What do you think on this one? We'll go with you, Dagan, first.
I think it'll look pretty similar, but I think a lot of the better players might start picking up Oldhim because it feels favored into both these other big matchups. Lexi is a little more of an issue, but I foresee a lot of those 4 decks between Dromai, Lexi, Oldhim, and Azalea, personally.
I saw a little bit of disgust in your face, Mara.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's classic 80% favored for Dromai.
I don't know where you get these numbers. Like, this is... I don't know if it's just, like Dagan and I are representing the 20% that keeps winning these games, but I don't want to slam money down because I'm not that confident. I'm not that good of a player, but like when I'm in the grind, dude, like, and I'm, in those early rounds of a battle hardened or something, and I go up against, if I go up against a Dromai and I see Ghostly Touch, I'm like, I'm going to just destroy you. Like, I'm just sorry. I'm really sorry. It's going to take a while, but I will surgically extract your life. Like, that is what's going to happen here.
That was a joke, by the way. Like I think that matchup is just honestly a pure skill matchup. It's an 80-80 matchup.
How about you, Levi? Do you think that this is going to actually shake up what we see in Baltimore, or is this just going to basically translate times X amount of people?
I think it is going to shift a little bit. Honestly, I think the Azalea representation is going to drop a little bit. Azalea, at the start of the Outsiders meta, seemed like a really good pick because it was great into all of these aggressive decks, all the off meta picks. It was just strong, but it has some weaknesses like Dromai, Oldhim, Bravo, getting fatigued by dash, and then Azuri has popped up as something that can target it. And now all of a sudden, it feels like all of the top decks are just there like, okay, if we're going to play a deck, we have to have a good Azalea matchup. So Azalea can still kill them, but all these like super favored matchups are just gone from the meta. So you're playing a bunch of decks that are teched out for you. So I think people are going to look at Richmond and go, okay, maybe Azalea isn't the pick. Hence why I said 95 and not 100. So yeah, I think Azalea is going to dip down a little bit, and we could see some level 2 where we have people going, oh, I think Azalea is also going to dip. They'll start grabbing some of their aggro decks that can kill the defensive dashes and the Dromais that were planning on just dying to Azalea before.
And what's funny is that when I hear you say that and, adjusting for this potential shift, all I can think about is just Oldhim players saying, yeah, it's fine. That's cool. Like, it's
yeah,
just,
he's staying
why
up
go
there.
through all these extra steps? Just play the best deck.
Exactly.
That's why I'm on Dromai.
Oh, yeah. It's just like that. But it's just funny because that's what it comes down to, right? Without Icelander out there, which was a really tough out in certain cases for an Oldhim player, and in some cases, like if you were on Oldhim and you didn't have an aggressive package that was drawing well early, that was able to pay through certain nonsense and whatever, if you weren't sending 8+ every turn at them, like you had to have the longer game plan, like the Warhorn, the Control, the AB3 plus, Crown, and do a whole bunch of other nonsense. But at the end of the day, you're still, it's still up in the air. But we're looking at it, and there was only 2 Icelanders there, and I don't think that that's really going to pick up much. But if what I'm seeing here again is what you guys are saying is just, okay, maybe things shift. Maybe people come off of Azalea and move more towards the aggro package. And again, Oldham's just sitting there like, that's cool. Like, that is totally fine. Like, it doesn't matter. Oldhim is the dude who gets on the plane first, gets his seat in first class, and watches everybody shuffle miserably, worrying where they're going to put their luggage. And he's just there like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm still getting to the same destination, and it's all good. I'm wondering at this rate, if you guys can all just run through, what are you confident in, and what are you most worried about with your hero positioned at this tournament? I'll start with you, Mara, as the Dromai representative here. What are the matches you're hunting for, the feel-good matches, and what are the matches you feel are going to be either, I don't want to say quasi unwinnable, but relatively, like, I need to play my damnedest?
So I'm a little fearful. Levi talked about the level 2ing about everybody who's not considering Azalea anymore. Azalea did a really good job of pushing out all of my bad matchups. So if we could please make sure the Azalea representation stays in the Pro Tour, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, no, I mean, like, the matchups that Dromai has historically struggled in, being like Phi. Katsu's a little bit better than Phi, but it's still a little bit rough. The Viscerais, like some of these really, really aggressive matchups have historically been a little bit rough for Dromai. I've been very curious to see, like, there's been a lot of discussion in Dromai about the Lexi matchup. Most of the Dromai players seem to say that that's favored, but then also I've seen a lot of the Lexi players say that one's favored. So that's going to be an interesting one to kind of see how that pans out. But I think Dromai as a whole is just such a flexible deck that it's going to kind of depend on how people build her to determine really where her bad matchups are going to be. I think Dromai can build to beat just about anything in this meta, but I don't think she can do it all at once. So I think the Dromais that you're going to see do very well are the ones that have a very good read on the meta and have adapted to it.
That's fair. I mean, you've put in some games against Nick Bolas and his Lexi list, and I feel like the interesting part about those matchups that I got to watch and sort of ride shotgun on is that they were very lopsided one way or the other. Like you either beat the crap out of it, or or the Lexi just sort of ran through you to a degree and made it very awkward. I don't know what to take from that, but ultimately it's just fascinating because everybody thinks that they're just bulletproof in certain matchups. It's like, I'm favored. No, I'm favored. And at the end of the day, like, in my opinion, maybe neither of you are going to win the tournament.
I'll be honest. I think that speaks to a lot of just the foundation of Flesh and Blood as a whole. I think that there's so many people that come from like Magic and some of these other games where there are these very, very clear cut where like your deck is really what wins the games and the players have so little agency in a lot of these games. Whereas in Flesh and Blood, I think the player has so much agency. Like there's so many different choices being made at every single turn that I think you just see a lot of these matchups where the answer isn't, is my deck favored into yours? What's our matchup percentage? It's just who's the better player. I mean, you see people like Michael Hamilton just consistently winning, Brody Spurlock, these guys that are just like, if there's an event, they're in the top 8 of it. No matter what deck they're on, no matter what the meta looks like. I think a lot of these, talk about, matchup percentages may not even be as relevant as we want them to be, just because I think skill expression matters so much in this game.
So there's one quick thing that I just want to jump on, which is what you like. If there was a couple, you said like, oh, it depends what build that they're bringing in. Like what in your opinion then is the correct build?
So I'm obviously biased towards the red line lists. That's the Empress list that I kind of built and have been doing a lot of work with. I think that kind of list naturally just is a more efficient list, but it's built to be. But then at the same time, the big dragon lists have like the ones that are running just the big blues and the big heavy dragons have some have a different matchup spread. Like I said, it's just I don't even really know like what build I'm gonna land on right now. I literally, my FAB right now has I think 8 different Dromai builds, and it's just trying to kind of watch the meta and see which directions we think it's gonna go, and how do we best kind of adjust and adapt.
All right, so I'm gonna hit you last, Levi, because I'm positioning myself on this one because I want to move over here to Dagan with the same kind of question, which is, there are fatigue Oldhims, there are very aggressive Oldhims that'll run, 3 E strikes, 3 even zealous beltings, like go crazy on that, lots of pummels, just make it uncomfortable. Then there's like kind of mid range, like you have some big attacks in there, but it's more of an opportunistic type deck. In your evaluation, what is the right deck to bring into the tournament, and what are the matchups you are probably looking to avoid?
Well, I think like the pure aggro version with like Zealous Belting, I don't know if that's in a good spot, because you don't want a deck like Azalea to just like hit you with an on hit when your pants are down, when you get some 2-blocks in your hand. So I think at the very least you need to have a strong mid-range plan. But fatigue is also strong as well. But then whenever you play that version, you have 2 opponents. It's your opponent and the clock. So I'm always leaning towards mid-range, but I like having a plan to fatigue if the opportunity comes up as well, if that makes sense.
So what's the trap here? Like, what's the cards that you're saying that, like I played some Oldhim again on stream today because it won Richmond. I'm like, let's just bust it out again. Like, it's a nice comfort food for me to a degree. I didn't look at any lists. I just built one based off whatever I saw was going to be out there. And I went 3-0 today on stream with just something that was not very aggressive. It had like 3 E strikes and 3 pulverizes in it, and the standard fare of like red chokeslams, spinals, and the rest were mainly just blues or 3 command and conquers. Is there a card or something out there that players on Oldhim might be thinking, you know what, I'm gonna get naughty with this. I'm gonna put some crazy tech cards in here to beat this particular matchup and whatnot. Be it something like Crush Confidence or in the same way that some players would play like a lot of Crush the Weeks in the FAB meta to try to shore up those types of those matchups. Is there any particular card or strategy or lane that certain Oldhim players are looking to explore that you've gone through the trenches and said this is just not right?
I think fatigue is just like a plan A. I don't think that's the play. I would not want to be building my entire deck around the Warhorn plan because it's so fragile to any decks that are really prepared for you. Like you saw people like Nathan Crawford with the Rites of Replenishment combo, like counter fatigue, another Oldhim. Or I was even playing like his beefy Briar list and fatigued Oldhims with Briar as well in Indianapolis. So I don't think that's ever going to be a good plan A. So I think that's the biggest trap personally.
All right. And now we come to you, Levi. And the reason why I'm coming to you last is because the way that I framed the question for both Mara and for Dagan is that there's multiple different versions that you can kind of push through. But what I'm getting from Azalea is that there's just the version, that there's just a way to build it that is optimized. And it seems to be like it was just the same kind of deck that existed for the months and months ahead of Outsiders that you've kind of been playing. And now you got a whole bunch of stuff. And this is just the optimized version, that any other deviation from this is kind of wrong. Is there a second or even third option for Azalea, or what we're seeing, in that mirror match at the Chicago Brawl between you and Brody? Is that is the framework? That is the foundation?
I obviously, as the person who kind of built the deck over years of like refining, I think it's the best version. However, I think there is arguments for some other builds. You've got like some tall lists that are focused more on dominate that may be able to push through Oldhim. If you just go tall enough, you can leak damage. I think that list is going to struggle more against like Dromai because you don't have the tools to go wide to clear dragons when you need to. I think it's tough to say. As much as I'm happy that people are playing like my version of the deck, I sometimes feel like we almost get in like an echo chamber of this version is performing the best, therefore this is the best version, instead of, okay, well, what else can we look at? Like, what other ways can we build the deck? And people go to build a deck another way, and people go, wow, you should be playing Levi's list. It's like, well, maybe, but there's room for improvement. So I think there probably is another list out there. Is it better? I don't know. Probably not. I don't think so. I've tested a lot of different ideas. I haven't come to the conclusion. Maybe it fits someone else's playstyle better. Maybe they can perform better on it. But the answer is, I guess, maybe. We just haven't found it yet.
Well, that's sort of what I want to come down to, is the fact that you've been in there in the trenches working at this. You've been in the labs on this for years. Like, that's not like an exaggeration, right? Like, you've been at this, since. So,
I've been on Azalea since Monarch.
Okay, so you've been on this for quite a long time, and you've really put the work in. And I think that everyone around you has essentially benefited from your hard work, where it's not like you were, the Azalea cult exists, but I don't think that they're out there with the same intention that you are. They might show up to a tournament with it as like for fun, the same way that, Tommy Fresh is like, I rolled dice and I chose Levia, like that's, there's an actual, there's actual science behind it to a degree. And the successful decks that I've seen, like I've seen Big Dragon Dromai, Redline Dromai, I've seen Fatigue Oldhim, Aggro Oldhim, Midrange Oldhim, all have success, but I've only seen one version of Azalea have success. What is like the other version that even has a prayer?
I think it's just the strict go tall version, which I think lacks some consistency and a little bit of flexibility, but it's raw power if you're just chaining 15 dominate every turn, you kind of just win. That's the theory, at least.
Well, yeah. And then, I mean, if something like Ren the Ledger or Remorseless, I mean, you get those cards back with Codex A Frailty, which in itself is like a whole other conversation. Do you guys want to talk about that for like a minute or two? Do you guys have an opinion on Codex A Frailty at all?
I'm always down to talk about Codex. I don't like the card. I think it's way overtuned, and it's deceptively. I think it's stronger than it appears, because a lot of people, when they look at its play patterns, they look at just like what is completed over the turn cycle, and they kind of disregard the ponder. So they'll compare it to things like a 5-card Art of War turn from Chain or Phi, and they're going, wow, look at this massive turn. They've got a higher number than the Azalea player. The thing is, those turns require setup. Those turns typically don't end on an arsenal. Those turns require variance based on what you draw. Codex of Frailty just has 1 card, frequently 7, 8, 9 value tempo swings, with the additional flexibility of sometimes it disrupts your opponent. Like at the Brawl in my round 7, I killed my opponent off of Frailty, or a Codex of Frailty, that I didn't even get the card from grave. All I did was just play it and make them discard.
Levi,
And
you did
put a
that to
block.
me at least once in our testing games.
Yeah, you can do that. You can. I've like knocked a card on top and then Codex of Frailty and then Azalea in the card that I knocked, and I've played it just for a Frailty token against like Alexi on turn 1, and then I get to play out the rest of my hand. I still get my arsenal, and all of a sudden I got like 4 value, and the card replaced itself. Like, the card is incredibly flexible. They made it block, unlike all these other power cards. Even blocking for 2, which you rarely are going to. But you have that option, and it's a yellow pitch.
Yeah,
Like,
kind of.
Azalea already wanted yellow pitch. It should have been a red non-block. Should have been a red
The fact-
non-block.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that it's very clear how strong these new outsider cards are because of how drastic the meta shifted to just push out all the other aggro decks because of how strong the new Azalea cards alone are. Like, it just killed them straight up. Icelander is basically almost dead too, as far as I can tell. Like, these new Azalea cards, including Codex, just killed all of them.
Yeah. And even the old Azalea cards, right? Like, I mean, we've been saying for a while that like Azalea, the cards that Azalea had access to were incredibly powerful from the beginning. They were just on a hero that just didn't have that critical mass of power cards. And now she has more than that critical mass of power cards. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a whole lot of argument that Red in the Ledger is probably one of the best cards in the game.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
Yeah, I mean, like Red in the Ledger's, it's okay. The problem is that it's more than okay against a significant amount of decks that are out there, like you said. And the fact that Codex of Frailty now, there's no longer the situation of like, you know, when you play against like a Guardian or something like that, you're like, all right, that's like, you know, it's okay. I got him up against Bravo. Okay, there's 1 Crippling Crush. There's 2 Crippling Crushes. There's the 3rd. Okay, like I've eaten 3. I still have double digit health. Like, there's a chance here. We can get through it. Life is good. The difference here is that I think Codex of Frailty, what is giving it a lot of pause, is like Levi said, it's to me, it's like Soul Reaping, where the more you read it, the more you realize how absolutely insane that card can be, where it's like, oh, I get a Ponder token too. They get a Frailty too, like this and that. And oh my God, like you get a whole bunch of awesome stuff in it. But it's not like Remembrance, where if you want to play more Crippling Crushes, you'll play Remembrance and shuffle them back into your deck. This is, I get this card that I want and see with my eyes, put it into my arsenal, can fire it straight away, and you get gooned with a card out of your hand, and now you're going to put some trash into your arsenal, most likely, depending on what the hero situation is. It's like point, click, and I've got it. That's the issue. It's like having 3 extra copies of whatever the hell card you want. And I don't know if there's a way to change it up or fix it, and you know, like, you got to trust the devs here in terms of, this is a card that they were clearly aware was going to be good. They made 3 others, or 2 other versions of codexes. But are you anticipating, Dagan, that this is a card you think will get addressed down the line?
I think down the line, probably. Anytime soon, it'll depend on the Pro Tour results. If it's like overwhelming that Ranger just like beats up everything, then they'll probably have to address it pretty soon. But the more cards that are added to the Ranger pool, the more obscene that card will probably get overall.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best suggestions that I got was actually Sam Dando, him and I in the car driving from the airport. We're just shooting the breeze about stuff, and we're talking about Codex and the significance of it. And he said, you know what, like, how crazy would this card be if it just became an assassin card versus a Ranger card? Like, if you take away the dual class affiliation of it, is it just as good, or is this good purely, or is this card just egregious because it's in a class that is already fairly strong now?
So that's an interesting point because I think we have cards like that are just functionally absurd, but the rest of the deck doesn't support it well enough or push that deck up to the top. And people will make the argument that it's like necessary, like, oh, these decks need this card to function. And that can be true to an extent, but it also limits design space. It limits the ability for LSS to print more cards for those heroes. Stuff like Lumina Ascension and Bolton. Like, that card is insane. Just the rest of his deck sucks.
Yeah.
However, if they give Bolton support, all of a sudden people are going to realize, wow, this card is just not okay. And maybe LSS has to be careful on what they can print for Bolton because of Lumina Ascension. You've got stuff like Bloodrush Bellows in the Brutes. That card was printed very first set, and that is an absurd card. And I think Brute has been hurt by it for the rest of their time because LSS has had to be careful on what they can print for Brute. Because as soon as you print something else as another power card or another 2 power cards, all of a sudden people are going to be complaining that Brute is OP because Bloodrush Bellows is a wild card. So I think you kind of have that, you'd have that issue with Assassin if you made Codex only Assassin, where all of a sudden Assassin has access to this very powerful card, Codex A Frailty, and now they have to be careful what they print for Assassin.
But they already have access to it, right? Like that. So they're like the one question I had. Like I like to play devil's advocate because when this card came out, everybody lost their shit about it, absolutely, and there was all kinds of some of the more ridiculous takes on Twitter being like, "Does Brian Gottlieb even read the cards?" Like, let's get real. Like, come on, like it's a strong card, we get it, but so is like Aether Wildfire. Like Aether Wildfire is a bananas card. It doesn't. It vastly exceeds the impact of what Codex A Frailty does. Codex A Frailty is a very strong card that you play and has effect on like, you know, a significant chunk of your health. But it's not it's not patient zero for a 35 damage like beatdown. Like, why aren't there players losing their mind, let's say, about Aether Wildfire when the power level and the significance of what that can do is leagues beyond it? And I don't know if Dagan, do you have an opinion on Codex of Frailty specifically, and in conjunction with or in relation to other strong class related cards like Levi said, Bloodrush Bellow, or something like Aether Wildfire?
I mean, Brian Gottlieb made it very clear in his tweets that certain classes needed certain very powerful cards, and they're going to continue to kind of bounce around those cards, it felt like, instead of like the overall class. Each class has like very powerful cards, like he was just talking about with Bloodrush Bellow. So I think it's just a different way they're trying to balance. If it was too pushed, I mean, we'll have to see. But
yeah, that like it's going to come down to just whatever the top 8 is going to look like, I suppose, or even the conversion rates in Baltimore. If I think that there's 2 ways that this can go, which is it could happen that like the top 8 and all the matches that we cast will have, maybe there's 3 Rangers in there, and maybe Codex of Frailty has a pretty forgettable impact. Like maybe like in the games you play it connects for damage. Maybe they load up like an endless arrow that they get to reload again, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's it. But what I think what people are already, concocting in their minds is a situation where, let's say there's on stream at the feature table, something goes down where Codex of Frailty is abused to a way that just absolutely makes almost like a non-game in a sense. And do you have that same concern, Mara, where cards, maybe not necessarily Codex of Frailty specifically, but do you think that if Codex of Frailty overperforms on stage but doesn't really have much of an overall impact, do you think that that's going to drum up the pitchforks again?
I mean, I think at some level, of course, like so much of this game is just driven by that public perception, right? Like, but it's kind of it's kind of hard to say exactly, just because like you have the public perception of things, and then that's not always exactly how we see things go with actual gameplay. I mean, we're talking earlier about these like 80% matchups. And I think we might see some pitchforks come out if we see these games. But I think LSS at the very least is, if not immune to that, they're aware of that phenomenon. And I don't know that we'll see bans come out unless we start seeing real results.
Yeah, like that's the problem, right? Because erratas are something I think that they don't want to do. Like, there's no
Oh,
way.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just it's too much headache, right? Like
They're terrible.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I think Briar got an errata specifically just because they didn't want to delete the hero. But otherwise, I think they've pretty well established that that's just not an option on the table.
I like the thought that, like you mentioned, where whenever there's an underperforming hero or class in general, it's like, it seems like there's sets where they're just like, we're going to poke it and push it a little bit closer, a little bit higher up the mountain. Like, it's like that game in that Price is Right game with the mountain climber, like, that whole thing. It's like, we're going to keep pushing it up the mountain, and eventually it's going to hit Living Legend and fall off because we've given it so much extra help. I feel like Codex A Frailty is like, they've given Levi, you know this because you've been there since day one. There have been how many sets where there has been Ranger cards where they're like, this is going to change things, or people like look at the Ranger cards and say, maybe this is finally where she awakens from her slumber. Is this the first card for Azalea you think that they've printed where it's like, holy shit, okay, we've got something here? Or have you ever felt this in the past with certain cards that they printed?
Individual cards, maybe not. The entire Everfest set, I think, was really, really good for Azalea. I think she went from actually unplayable to like slightly below average with Everfest. The problem was that was the same time we had Starvo. So Azalea getting a big power bump didn't actually matter because Starvo was killing everything. And we also had Prism as a top dog in that meta.
Prism got a lot in Everfest too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the Rune Blades got a ton in Everfest. But Azalea on her own got a huge power increase in Everfest. And I think she was a lot better than people thought. And people all the way up until Outsiders kind of had that idea of Azalea based on pre-Everfest, where she actually was really, really bad. It was actually funny looking back at some old Azalea lists from Monarch meta. We now don't have room for all of our 0-for-3s. We have so many 0-for-3s. At the time, we were playing Take Aim, Nimblism, and Plunder Run as our only 0-cost buffs. Those were all that we had access to.
And here you are with Lace with everything. Like,
Yeah, Lace with everything, Premeditate, Release the Tension, Read the Glide Path, Take Aim. I mean, we're not playing Nimblism. We've got, I don't know. There's way too many. I have a list of like 50 cards that I could play as buffs that we just don't have room for anymore. So it was just funny to see the difference between the two.
This just feels exactly like I was saying, where it's like every set, I feel like they're like, all right, we're gonna ramp it up to like a 2, and then they're like, okay, that's not working. Let's give it a 3, and then they're like, shit, okay, that's not happening. Well, Everfest, like, what do we do for Everfest? Let's ramp it up to like a 7. Let's see what happens there. And then meanwhile, like, Starvo's on a 12, so it doesn't really matter. But ultimately, this is where I think that there might be a problem, because a lot of times heroes will get help, and since there's no standard rotation, every time a new set comes in where there's class cards, the overall quality of that hero should, in a vacuum, increase because they have access to more cards. Whether those cards are good or bad, whatever. There's more things that they can play with. Typically, as those heroes improve, they already have been racking up Living Legend points, and maybe the help they get is a little bit. But eventually, if they do get very good cards, the result is that they get pushed into Living Legend status because they'll just go on a tear, right? The issue here is that Azalea has been absolute wholesale ass for so long that she has a fat goose egg when it comes to Living Legend points. And if she becomes ultra powerful because they keep feeding her steroids, then we're going to be in a situation where, like that Starvo thing, that Starvo era, where he had like this terrorizing run of 3 months, missed the Living Legend cutoff by like 2 points. And then it was like, all right, I'm legal for another season, bitch. And then just went on another tear. like that is my concern. I don't know if like Dagan, if you have the same concern when it comes to heroes that get like these gigantic, like they get their tires pumped like crazy and they're off to the races, because she's got 1,000 living legend points of leeway to just go and be a menace.
I mean, it is certainly a fear, right? But like, the good thing is that she's not at Starvo levels. She's like a baby Starvo right now. Well, she's still clearly good, but not. I mean, she does the one big dominate thing per turn. That's like all she really does. She doesn't have Oakenhold, which also just deletes your hand. So there's that at least.
We've got Deadeye.
That's close.
She doesn't have Winter's Wail.
Ranger's Copium is the best stuff
Yeah.
ever. Like,
It's no Oakenhold, but
It's no Oakenhold, right?
Well, the Starvo thing was like, I'm gonna beat the piss out of you, and then I'm gonna club you over the head with an ice hammer. Like that was the whole thing. It was such a perfect symphony of hatred that would just be launched at you. Like,
And wide.
oh god, it was disgusting. But how about, like your concerns? I don't know if either you, Levi, or Mara, like, do you guys have any concerns about a hero? I mean, Azalea aside, a hero that just gets this airdrop, this care package of so many cool things, and has all day and all night to just rock on with like all the new toys.
I'm not that afraid of it right now, because I think LSS hopefully learned their lesson with Starvo and will not print anything that powerful on its own without being checked in the near future. So yeah, I don't think that something like Starvo will happen again anytime soon.
Yeah, I was going to say about the same thing. Like, I don't want to say I don't think LSS is ever going to make another mistake, but I think they're more aware of the possibility of something like the Starvo happening again. We saw, with Dynasty, I think, a very big kind of pullback on those supplemental sets of how hard they're willing to push the power level compared to Everfest. I think Everfest kind of made them skittish. You saw a ton of power in a ton of decks all at once, and then Starvo on top of it. And I think, at least for the time being, I think we've seen them more hesitant to drop that much power all at once.
The difference right now, I think, is that Azalea has some checks, like Oldhim or Dromai. She has some unfavorable matchups. Starvo is just good.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have present players say that it's like an auto win or something, but they're wrong. So,
it's the same conversation like with the Dromais and the Guardians. It's like both of them think that they're bulletproof, when in reality, it all comes down, I guess, to a particular skill matchup. I sincerely appreciate all three of you, your insight, your expertise. It has been really quite a revelation to listen to you guys talk about the meta and the tournament coming up. And I want to sort of end it off real quick with what your predictions are in terms of what the top 8 representation is going to be, and who you believe is going to be in that final table, what that final table is going to be. I want names and I want heroes. So who wants to venture first? Who's the brave soul that's going to give me their predictions and stick them on the wall? Nobody. You're all.
I call Hamilton on Oldhim.
Hamilton on Oldhim.
I mean, that one's a given.
All right, so hold on.
He's on Oldhim, though.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go back. Hold on a second. So Dagan, you ventured it first, but give me give me your top 8. What 8 heroes are going to be in the top 8? And you're saying it's going to be Hamilton on Oldhim that takes it. So who are the top 8 heroes?
I'm going to say like 2 to 3, maybe up to 4 as Oldhim, to be honest. Then you'll have maybe one Azalea, but I think Lexi will probably perform better. So we'll have like maybe 2 Lexis. There will always be one Dromai in the top 8, but she'll never convert, as tradition. So we'll have one of those.
I can't even argue with that.
Yeah, it's tradition. And then we might have like a Dash in there, like a Tree Frog that has good matchups or something.
All right, I like it.
That'll be most of the top 8s, probably those.
And Hamilton is going to go and win a Pro Tour like Hamilton does. Angel of Death.
As he does.
Psychopath. I love him, but man, is he scary. Levi, what are your predictions?
Very similar to Dagan's. I was gonna say 3 Oldhims. And yeah, I was gonna say 2 Rangers. probably leaning towards 2 Lexis, possibly 1 and 1. Just because I think Lexi has a much better Oldhim matchup right now. I'll disagree on Dromai. I'm gonna go with no Dromais. Just for you, Mara. And then let's see. I think a dash could sneak in. And then I need 2 more slots. Let's go with a Bravo. And let's throw a Katsu up there.
Oh wow.
I don't think a Katsu will make it, but I had to pick another slot.
I mean, if you want to go and like reach into the dog pile of garbage, I mean, you can just pull out a Riptide if you want to.
Okay, we'll change it to Phi. I'm gonna put a Phi up there.
Okay, that seems a little bit more.
He's gonna be killing all the Dromais. That's why he's there.
Ah, okay. So it's Daniel Rutkowski on Phi, is what you're saying.
There it is.
All right.
Yep.
And who's winning it?
Hamilton on Oldhim.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
This is the world we live in, by the way, because like it's not even. I can't even accuse you of being unoriginal.
Okay, fine. Dagan on Oldhim. There you go.
Ah.
Let's go.
Unfortunately, I already wrote down Michael Hamilton. Oh, so Dagan, I'm sorry. There's always
Oh.
Metazu.
No, there's not.
No, there's not. There's not.
Oh, no, I heard you got unbanned. Right.
Yeah, what's up with that, dude? Like, come on, time for the resurgence, the return of the Mac. No.
Nah.
Okay.
It's not worth my time.
All right. So finally, we come to you with all the disrespect towards Dromai. We ask the Empress herself, what is the top 8 representation and who's winning on what?
You know what? I'm gonna say no Azaleas on spite.
Okay.
I think we'll see. I think we'll see Alexi. I'm gonna say 2 Oldhims. I think Oldhim looks real strong, but I think everybody knows Oldhim is going to be the best deck. And so, like, I don't think anyone is going to go into this tournament without a really good Oldhim plan. And we're going to see some of the best players in the game finding ways to crack that. And so I think 2 Oldhims, just because raw power level. I think we're going to see 2 Dromais, but I think the 2 Dromais are going to be on different lists. I think we're going to see some real innovation in Dromai in this event. Alexi. And then I think we'll probably see a little bit of a resurgence of aggro. I think we are going to see some people kind of, assume that the Azaleas are gonna not show up in force. I think a lot of players aren't expecting Azalea, so I think we may see a resurgence of maybe not Phi, but like Briar, probably not Viserai, but like I think we're gonna see a Runeblade, and then I think a Dash. I think the Tree Frog Dash list looks really solid right now.
You know what I haven't heard is any assassins, honestly. Like no Azuri, no nothing. Lots of cool toys, but nobody gives a flying F about it either.
I actually think Azuri is a really interesting right now, because I think Azuri is very much in a similar boat to Dromai in that, like, I think she has a lot of tools, but no one's quite solved that deck. I really like Sam's list, and I think that's a really good framework. But I think if we do see an Azuri, I think it'll be a serious innovation too.
Charmer
It has to be.
Yeah, Charmer's been putting a lot of work into it, but him and I have complete differences in philosophy. He's like, the 9 pummels, I'd put 10 if I could, and I was like, 3, maybe.
I think pummel's a trap.
I kind of agree, but that's just me. But all right, who possibly, related to Schmeichel Schmamilton, do you think is going to win the Pro Tour?
You know what? I'm going to deviate on this one. I think Michael Hamilton clearly in the top 8, but I think it's time for a new generation. I want to see Brody. I want to see Brody take this one.
Yeah, we stand Brody in this house 100%. Yeah. So
I think it's time. We've got some of the big battle hardened grinders who are just consistent players like Brody and like Michael Fang, who are just in the top 8 of everything. And I think it's time to see them really step up and shine.
I think Fang is slated for a big win at some point. This is somebody who is so freaking good at the game. Super nice, super awesome. Also,
I just had the honor of playing him in the top 8 of the PTI event last weekend.
And how'd you do?
He took the game, but it was inches close. We were literally both in fatigue.
Listen,
And he had exactly. I was 1 point of damage short.
he got there. He definitely got
It
there.
was. It was just a great game though. Like he's such a amazing player.
All right, Dagan, I'm going to ask you something here because what Mara said, and like as soon as she said it, I kind of looked at you for your reaction, which was, oh, you know, like Oldham's going to be around, so people are going to be teching against Oldhim and ready for it. Like, how long have you heard that statement of people being ready for Oldhim and Oldhim still just plows through?
I did say there were 2 Oldhams still even through that.
He's just the rock. I don't think he has any like straight hard counter at the moment. Even something like terrible like Iris Dromai that's supposed to be a counter will not be Oldham's.
Yeah, it's like he is rock, and they have yet to print paper to beat him. So it's like that's.
Have you played the Iris Dromai matchup?
I have actually. Yeah.
Have you really?
100%.
That matchup.
Yeah, I have a 100% win rate versus that one too. I've played against it like about a dozen times.
Have you played a good player on it?
I mean,
I think it's because
I will say like we like my group had a discussion about Iris Dromai. That matchup into Oldhim is pretty rough for Oldhim. The problem is Iris Dromai gets rolled by literally anything else. Like her matchups were Oldhim and Icelander's gone. So like if anyone wants to take Iris Dromai to this event, they're gonna have one real good matchup, and they just hope to just see what is it, eight Oldhams in a row.
Easy.
I think part of it is just the fact, like you mentioned, like, did you play against a good player playing the Irish Dromai? I'm like, good players wouldn't play the Irish Dromai.
Exactly.
I will give it this.
I'll put it together.
I will give it this. It was a harder time for me to beat Irish Dromais than Irish Dromais. Did I say Irish Dromais?
Yeah.
Okay, she's Irish now. Irish Dromais than dealing with like the dragon long form. Like it was tougher. But maybe it was just because of unfamiliarity. Nonetheless, that's where we're at. So I've got 2 Michael Hamiltons and a Brody and like 0.5 of a Dagan to win it. So I like it. All right. My friends, I do sincerely appreciate you coming on the show. So why don't we do our pluggables? Let's start with you, Levi, because you have one of the more unique Twitter handles I've ever seen in my life that I could not, like, in a million years, I would, like, when I'm trying to tag somebody into a post and I'm looking for their Twitter, I like at Levi, couldn't find you until I had to ask you.
Yeah, so I'm a papaya on Twitter. I think there's some underscores in between the things.
So let me clarify
the
this.
story behind that.
Well, I wanted to ask that too, but it's at IM_A_papaya, like the fruit, I guess. Can you please explain where this comes from?
Yeah, probably, I guess it's been like 10 years now, playing RuneScape in high school. And I was collecting papayas for money, and it was fun to say I'm a papaya. So I changed my name to that, and it stuck for enough years that you don't want to change names off of it again. So I am just papaya now. Well,
we like that you're a papaya, and thank you for everything that you do, and for ringing the bell for Azalea for so long. And I'm glad that you're getting your comeuppance here because you deserve it.
Thanks.
No worries. Let's go with Mara Faris, the artist of Blackwing Studio, the only artist I've ever commissioned a card from.
Yeah, and it was a Katsu, and now he's totally viable again. Aren't you happy?
I feel responsible for it because as soon as I received that card, I think they spoiled Fi, and I was like, oh well, I guess this could go directly in the trash. That was money well spent. It's in like this hard cases on the desk over there, just waiting. And I thought with Outsiders, this was gonna be.
You and I had this conversation. You specifically came to me and you're like, I'm so excited. I get to use my Katsu again. And then Azalea happened.
Yeah, no, Be Like Water could be like my ass. Like it was not all that great. But please regale us with all of your pluggables.
So I am at Blackwing Studio pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty active on Twitter. Just at Blackwing Studio on Twitter. I have an Etsy shop that's just Blackwing Studio on Etsy, where you can buy my my custom tokens. And then I've got Blackwing Studio on Patreon, where I do both art and free altars and tokens every month, as well as a ton of Dromai content. I just not too long ago wrote a 21-page Empress Dromai primer that I put up on my Patreon.
Well, excuse me. All right, go check all that out. Thank you so much for doing the show. And finally, one of my favorite people, whom I got to show one of my favorite movies to, Mr. Dagan White. So first things first, before you tell me anything, give me your 3-sentence review of your new favorite 90s movie.
I mean, I could give it to you in one word.
Okay, well, first of all, tell us what it is. Not the word,
This
the
is
movie.
embarrassing. I'm blanking.
Though you forgot the name of the movie? You absolute scumbag. I literally tweet at you or mention you in a Discord chat about this movie. Like how often? Once a week?
I can't believe you don't even remember True Lies.
There it is. Yes, I have the memory of a squirrel. It is awful.
Oh, God.
I knew it. I knew your favorite movie.
Yes.
It is a cinematic action movie masterpiece achievement of all time. James Cameron did this movie and then did what? Titanic after this? Something like that? Like,
I've never heard of that one. It's fine.
Well, in next to True Lies, I don't blame him. That movie is a cinematic, it's a monument of what cinema is meant to be. Please tell us, Dagan, how much this movie has impacted your life.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what he says all the time.
It's true. It's so good though.
It is good because every time that you think the movie's like wrapping up, it's like, oh wait, he found a Harrier jet. It's like, what the hell? Yeah, it's like, oh, hold on a second. They still have that nuclear device that they have to disarm. Oh, they can't? All right. Like, it's just so ridiculous. But Dagan, you are one of the most dangerous players out there. You are consistently at the top of the seedings when it comes to these major tournaments, and I don't doubt that that PT Baltimore is going to be any different. You are a master of your craft, sir, and you do write some very, very helpful and informative articles and deck guides. Please tell us more about those.
First of all, it means a lot coming from you. Honestly, thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter at Kadachi1, as in the word one. And then I have all sorts of Oldhim content, etc. I try and put out something like once a week on my Patreon as well, which you can find pinned under my Twitter profile, including my 10-page Oldhim guide that I originally wrote up before they killed my hammer. But, you know, that's beside the point.
Yeah, we're all still in mourning about that one. It sucks.
I'm not. I'm really not.
Oh, man. Now we have to be like, oh, God, those days of just like, yeah, cool mirror guy. Like, cool everything. Now I have to be like, I got to keep this blue. Like, son of a bitch. Like,
now I just get to be like, cool mirror guy.
Whatever.
You do get a just for 4 now, so that's something.
Yeah. All right. Well, friends, thank you so much for doing the show. We do have the Go Again segment. Will you all stay for that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I suppose.
Hell yes. All right, friends. Well, thank you for listening to the Instant Speed podcast, to our sponsor at FAB Cards. Go to kfabecards.com for all of your sealed or singles needs for Flesh and Blood. Of course, BCW supplies. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off everything you buy there, even stocks in the company, but don't quote me on that because I don't think it's true. And I do want to shout out Manta Trading for sending me this hoodie. It is my favorite hoodie that I wear around the house. Manta Trading, Northern Toronto. Go check them out. Great people there. And of course, to you, the Patreon supporters, you guys rock. Stay tuned for the Go Again segment. You're not losing if you're learning. See you next time on ISP.
Well, I work